The waves crashed against the rocky shore, the salty spray filling the air as the sun set over the picturesque town of Whitby. It was here that the wealthy merchant, Edward, first laid eyes on the enigmatic woman who would become known as the Dark Lady of Whitby. She had been standing alone on the cliff's edge, her dark hair whipping in the wind as she gazed out over the sea. Something about her drew Edward in, and he found himself approaching her, his heart pounding in his chest. As they spoke, Edward learned that her name was Isabella, and that she had recently moved to Whitby from a distant land. Her beauty was matched only by her air of mystery, and Edward was quickly swept up in her spell. Their courtship was a whirlwind of passion and romance, and soon Edward was hopelessly in love with Isabella. But as their relationship deepened, strange things began to happen in the town. Rumors began to circulate about Isabella, that she was a witch who had brought a curse upon the town. People started to go missing, their bodies never to be found. Edward tried to ignore the whispers, convinced that Isabella was innocent. But as the disappearances continued, Edward started to have his doubts. He began to notice strange things about Isabella. Her eyes would sometimes glow in the dark, and her touch left a cold, icy sensation on his skin. One night, as Edward lay in bed, he heard a scratching at his window. At first, he assumed it was merely a tree branch, but the noise persisted. He sat up, his heart racing in his chest as he slowly approached the window. When he opened it, he saw Isabella outside, her face twisted into a snarl as she lunged towards him. Edward backed away in terror, realizing too late that he had been fooled by her beauty and charm. Isabella's eyes glowed a bright red in the darkness, and her hair seemed to writhe and move of its own accord. She reached out to touch Edward, and he felt a cold, icy sensation run down his spine. He scrambled to his feet, backing away from her, and as he did, she transformed into a large, black cat. The cat hissed and arched its back, preparing to pounce on Edward, but he was too quick. He ran from the room, his heart pounding in his chest, and down the stairs. As he reached the front door, he paused for a moment to catch his breath, and he heard the sound of the cat approaching from behind. He burst out of the house, running through the empty streets as Isabella pursued him. He could hear her mewling and hissing behind him, and he knew that he needed to find a place to hide. He turned a corner, and to his relief, he saw a small alleyway. Edward dashed down the alley, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps, and he squeezed himself between two buildings. He huddled there in the darkness, listening to the sound of Isabella's paws as she searched for him. But she was clever, and soon she found him. She leaped onto a nearby garbage bin, and then onto the roof of the building. Edward heard her claws scratching against the tiles as she made her way towards him. He realized that he was trapped, with nowhere to go, and as he turned to face her, Isabella transformed back into her human form. She stood before him, her eyes ablaze with a fiery light, and she reached out to touch him once more. But this time, Edward was ready. He lunged at her, pushing her away from him, and he ran towards the edge of the roof. He leaped into the air, hoping to clear the gap between the two buildings, but he misjudged his jump, and he fell. As he plummeted towards the ground, Edward felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that he had been foolish to fall under Isabella's spell, and he accepted his fate. The townsfolk of Whitby never saw Isabella again, and some say that she fled to a far-off land, using her powers to continue her wicked ways. But others believe that she met a similar fate to Edward's, falling victim to her own dark magic. Whatever the truth may be, the legend of the Dark Lady of Whitby lives on, a cautionary tale of love and loss, and the dangers of falling under the spell of the unknown. Thank you for listening.